पुरै त्रिशुली आमा 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 लाइभ लाइभ यो चाहिँ है गाइस यस्तो लाइभ छ आमा आमा यार बजारै गयो यार यहाँ नबसौँ ल अलि टाढा बसौँ टाढा यो पुरै ल घरहरू जम्मै गयो ल ल
Imagine standing in a quiet mountain valley, surrounded by some of the highest peaks on Earth. The morning appears completely normal. People are going about their daily lives, travelers are moving through mountain roads, pilgrims are continuing their journeys, and businesses are opening. Roads are carrying people and supplies across one of the most difficult landscapes on the planet. And then, without the kind of warning most people would expect, the mountain itself begins to collapse. Within minutes, an enormous wall of water, mud, ice, rocks, and debris surges downstream. Entire sections of villages disappear. Roads are ripped apart, bridges vanish, and power infrastructure is destroyed as people suddenly find themselves running for their lives. This is the catastrophic disaster unfolding along the Nepal-Tibet border, and this is not simply another monsoon flood. It is a devastating chain reaction involving glaciers, unstable mountain slopes, rivers, landslides, and an enormous amount of debris moving through narrow Himalayan valleys. As of August 27, rescue operations are still underway, and the numbers are changing rapidly. More than 350 people have been reported dead across Nepal and Tibet, while roughly 1,400 people are still missing. Among those missing are hundreds of foreign nationals, including tourists and religious pilgrims from countries around the world. For families waiting thousands of miles away, including families in the United States, the most terrifying part is that many people simply cannot be reached. Phone networks are down, roads have disappeared, and in some of the most remote areas, rescuers can only reach survivors by helicopter. This is the story of how one of the most dramatic natural disasters of 2026 unfolded in the Himalayas. The deeper you look into what happened, the more disturbing the story becomes. The disaster struck on August 26 in the mountainous border region between Nepal and China's Tibet Autonomous Region. Early reports suggested that an earthquake may have triggered the disaster after a seismic signal was detected, but later analysis pointed towards something very different. There was no conventional earthquake. Instead, the seismic signal was associated with the enormous collapse of rock and ice in the mountains. Simply put, the mountain moved. A huge mass of glacier, rock, and debris collapsed into the valley. When that material entered the river system, it created an extraordinary surge of water and sediment. Think about what happens when a gigantic amount of material suddenly falls into a narrow mountain valley. The river does not have time to gradually rise. The water is displaced, the channel becomes overloaded, and ice, rocks, mud, and water begin moving together. Driven by the steep terrain, gravity accelerates everything. The result is a flash flood with incredible destructive power, moving faster than people can run and tearing apart buildings that have stood for decades. Witnesses described scenes of pure terror as people desperately tried to escape with only seconds to react. The destruction spread across infrastructure that is absolutely critical to the region, including the Geelong port area, a vital connection between Nepal and Tibet. The disaster effectively turned sections of a major mountain route into an isolated emergency zone, creating a massive problem for rescuers. Rescuing people when the roads themselves have washed away requires helicopters, but aviation faces serious challenges in the Himalayas due to high mountains, volatile weather, narrow valleys, and completely destroyed landing zones. Rescuers are now racing against time, searching through enormous amounts of mud and debris. Every passing hour diminishes the chances of survival. The number of missing foreign tourists and religious pilgrims traveling toward Mount Kailash has captured international attention. Nationals from India, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, South Korea, and several European nations are caught up in the disaster. For American viewers, the uncertainty is agonizing. US citizens remain unaccounted for, and with local communications networks completely crippled, families back home have no way of knowing if their loved ones are safe. This tragedy highlights a much bigger and more terrifying question. Why are glaciers becoming so dangerous? Scientists have repeatedly warned that the Himalayas are experiencing rapid environmental changes. Temperatures are rising, glaciers are losing ice, and mountain slopes are weakening. While scientists are careful about directly attributing every single flood to climate change, warming conditions significantly increase the risks of catastrophic glacier collapses and glacial lake outburst floods. This disaster is not just a single tragic event, it is a blaring warning siren about the future for communities living beneath the thousands of glaciers in the Himalayas. The economic consequences will also be enormous. Nepal depends heavily on tourism, trekking, and international visitors. When roads and bridges are erased from the map, the impact continues long after the water recedes. Isolated villages can remain cut off for weeks, struggling without power, clean water, or medical supplies. Rescue teams are operating in an extremely dangerous environment, fully aware that unstable river channels and trapped water could trigger another devastating surge at any moment. Right now, rescue teams are still searching, families are still waiting. The full picture of this complex geological chain reaction may take weeks to emerge. But one thing is already clear. The Nepal-Tibet disaster is one of the most devastating Himalayan flood catastrophes in recent memory. Entire communities have been devastated, hundreds are dead, and over 1,000 remain missing. Tonight, somewhere in the Himalayas, rescue workers are still digging through the mud, hoping against hope to pull another survivor from the debris.